So let me ask one other question here before turning to a few people who have their hands up. This question from Michael Keller. If China did invade Taiwan, the takeover would be a fait accompli very quickly. The United States would face the decision about whether to go to war with a nuclear armed foe halfway around the world. Question, what do you think the United States would do in such a scenario?
Okay, I am not an expert on this situation. I've spent the last month since May 22nd. No, that's when my revelations came out. Since I think about May 1st, or April 28th, I'll be exact here, when not Tom Drake, my friend, pardon me, when Tom Friedman, the man I regard as on the New York Times as a smart fool, said, as he said on the case of Iraq, give war a chance. That's what he said in connection with before the Iraq war, give war a chance. We would spread democracy through the Middle East. So he's back now saying that we may have to go to war with China over Taiwan because Taiwan, as he spelled out, has the best, most advanced semiconductor chips in the world. And we can't let those go under the control of China. He didn't consider the possibility of moving that entire industry, if necessary, to Japan or the US or something. No, we would have to let them stay there and go to war over them. Question, would they survive that war? Not if it went to nuclear war, they'd all be wiped out. How about a conventional war? What happens to the semiconductor industry if we conduct defense of the island conventionally? Okay, the questioner, and now I'm speaking now just as somebody who's been reading as much as I can on this subject in the last month. That's all I can say. Having been made very nervous and focused by Tom's Friedman's account, and then reading others that said, yes, we should recognize Taiwan, we should support their independence, and yes, war is possible. The Economist magazine had, it turns out, a cover story just about the same time as Friedman's piece, in which there's a bullseye on Taiwan and it says the most dangerous place in the world. Okay, so that got my attention. And what my understanding is now is it's not sure what the listener just said, that if the Chinese attacked, they would quickly take over. The Taiwanese do have very significant buildup of forces themselves. They have a reason to fight, actually, to prevent being occupied by the mainland China and so forth. The Chinese might believe they would quickly win, and they might have a basis for believing that, and they could be wrong, very much wrong. In which case, the US probably, I think, would support them. Will Biden stand by as a democratic country, which he's recognized almost by inviting their ambassador to his inauguration, by having direct relations with him of a kind we haven't? We have eschewed in the past. He has encouraged them to declare independence. And by the way, what I learn is that an invasion by the Chinese is really very unlikely at this point, unless their independence is recognized by somebody. And our total support of them in advance would go very far toward recognizing independence. So it'd be dangerous. Let me just say, by the way, on that, you're asking about US policy. It seems to me utmost irresponsible for US officials to be encouraging the Taiwanese to declare full independence, and even more so to recognize that by the US, because supporting, as we have, their effective autonomy is one thing, and I have to support that. I do support that. But to encourage them to go further, which only a minority of Taiwanese Chinese have supported, to declare full independence, is asking for war. It's challenging Xi for war. Now, if the war occurs, they took it over quickly. If that happened, which they would want, the US might not get that involved. I think what's more likely is that there would be a significant war going on in which You ask, what will the US do? Okay, I would like US decisions about what I just said, recognizing Taiwan and diplomatic pressure on the Chinese as on Xinjiang, as on the Uyghurs and elsewhere, to be mindful of the possibility of a conventional war turning into a nuclear war, which would be a disaster for the world, both in the deaths caused and in the precedent it caused of nuclear weapons becoming what Eisenhower declared them to be in the 50s, conventional. Tactical nuclear weapons were conventional. And in 1955, he said in that crisis, in a press conference, I don't see why you wouldn't use a nuclear weapon just as you would use a bullet. Well, come on, okay. He may not have believed quite that himself, but he absolutely was prepared to use nuclear weapons if necessary. And they thought it would be necessary if the Chinese pressed their blockade, if they added air power to it. And he expected them to do that. Mao backed off at that point. But Mao had no nuclear weapons at that time, and the Chinese army was very much less than it is now. They have been building up for a long time. To be sure they'll back off. So here's a question I would raise to our planners and to everybody. The temptation to deter the Chinese by declaring full commitment to the support of Taiwan, even including nuclear weapons, which may be coming. The temptation to deter them that way is obvious, and it's happening. Question, how sure are people who know China that that would deter them if the Taiwanese declare independence? Everything I've have been reading in the last month tells me that the people I respect, and I could name some exceptions to that, indicate to me that if Taiwan says we are an independent state, in other words, we've seceded from China, there's not one China, there's two Chinas. And Biden is on track to change a 40-year-old one China policy of the US to a two China policy, which is the Chinese have always regarded as a cause for war. If he continues on that course without public protest when that occurs, question, will the Chinese then back off? And I don't think there's any assurance of that at all. To say, well, do they want a nuclear war? No, but they wouldn't necessarily assume he would carry out that threat. It would, after all, be insane. Not less insane to take part in the conventional process, which I think Biden would. But the Chinese might say, well, we'll win that one, and he won't go to nuclear war because it would be insane. And we would use our nuclear weapons against him and so forth. I don't think that a full commitment will necessarily deter Xi in this case any more than Mao or the others. And Deng Xiaoping, well, they all made this commitment. So my impression right now is extreme importance not to encourage, as Biden may well do, the Taiwanese to go further in declaring independence and calling for recognition by the other states, because that looks to me like playing with fire, and that the world is on the edge then of at least a small nuclear war. And that small nuclear war, which would kill millions and annihilate Taiwan to save it, would be a precedent, I think, then for an era that might well follow of small nuclear wars. And they wouldn't necessarily in themselves cause nuclear winter for quite a while until they escalated into a large-scale nuclear war. So that is not a development in human history that I want to see.